Danny Boyle is probably known around the world as one of the most versatile directors. Every film he has done, or near enough every film he has done, has been a completely different genre. They're all different. You go from his first film, his Shallow Grave, right through to his latest film in 2019, Yesterday, which is... They're the polar opposites of one another. They're just completely different. But the beauty of them, one thing that puts them together is the style. Throughout all of his films, you can see this struggle for the characters of what they want, what's reality and imagination. Just look at TRAINSPOTTIng, TRAINSPOTTIng 2, Yesterday, SLUMDOG Millionaire. This happens throughout. His style is very unique. In all of his stories, you get that struggle of the reality and imagination, but throughout his style is very much just storytelling that I think is... stories that you don't necessarily hear all that time. They're stories that don't get heard in the mainstream media. For instance, when you see this video, you'll start to understand why his films show the stories that they show and the characters that they show, because I think Danny Boyle definitely does take influence from his childhood, and that's why I'm here today, to talk to you about the films of Danny Boyle, and I hope you enjoy.
You make a film inch by inch, and that's one of the best expressions I've ever heard. It's absolutely true. You just inch forward.
He was born in Radcliffe in Lancashire in 1956, and he's always been very aware of his Catholic Anglo-Irish roots, something that I'm pretty sure we can all admit that he has pulled inspiration from in a lot of his films, one in particular being his 2004 family film, Millions.
Clever Cece, are you allowed to smoke then?
You can do what you like up there, son.
And I've always resisted making very particular kinds of films in America because I didn't grow up here. I love the place, but I don't know anything about it, really, if I'm honest. Mm-hmm. You give me something about growing up in Britain, I'm on it.
Right. Around the age of 12, there was a big chance of him following in his mum's dream of becoming a priest. However, this changed. He began to move away from the expected, and he began to find his own voice. His teen years were built upon music, particularly punk music. It was rebellious, and it was given a new voice, a place to be heard. I think we can definitely say that this period of his life and his love of music impacted his style of directing massively.
For both of us, the thing that's common for both of us is our love of music. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find two other filmmakers who spent so much of their work dedicated to songs and, and the joy that you get in putting them into films, really. So
just look at TRAINSPOTTIng. It is just the definition of a rebellious, music-loving film.
No more Catholics! No more Catholics! No more Catholics!
Starting out his career in theatre, he learned to work with actors, he learned to empathise with them, and he began to understand the relationship that he believes needs to be the most organic on set. Quickly moving on to the mid-90s, a time of massive change in terms of British culture. Thatcher is long gone, Britpop is taking the world by storm, and the movie world is about to be introduced to the unpredictable and rebellious Danny Boyle. He released Shallow Grave in 1994, followed by TRAINSPOTTIng in 1996. They were fast, unpredictable, and above all else, they rebelled. They were given a usually unheard voice a stage. Now, before we started talking about his movies specifically, I just wanted to bring up 4 films, 2 of which are his, and 2 that aren't. I've been watching a lot of films recently. I've been doing my Danny Boyle marathon, and it's kind of driven me to watch some other things, other British movies. And 4 that I just wanted to talk about really briefly were Billy Elliot, I, Daniel Blake, TRAINSPOTTIng and Shallow Grave. And the thing that these 4 films have in common, and you've got 28 Days Later as well, all of these kind of films show a Britain in a very broken, rough around the edges, and a bit dingy, where Britain is just a bit more rough, it's a bit more broken. You get to really, I think, explore the real people, the real stories of the country. And yeah, I think if I was to ever make a film, I'd try and develop something and develop a story and develop a world that represented that side of the UK that didn't really glam it all up, which is why you can probably guess why I'm such a massive fan of Danny Boyle. Because when you think back to what I said earlier in the video, you really kind of see that he takes his inspiration from his childhood and from where he was brought up and his working class background. That's very much his kind of that's what inspires him with his stories, I think. Even in films such as Slumdog Millionaire, it's very, yes, it does have that glamour and it has the studio side, but it's juxtaposed with the poor, rough around the edges, but really nice look inside of India. It looks beautiful, but it doesn't shy away from the horrors of real life stories, and I think that translates into all of his movies.
There was that feeling in that a few years preceding that, the public spirit had disappeared. This long period of individuality, of selfishness, there's no such thing as society. That led inexorably to us wanting to re-establish a sense of idealism.
When Shallow Grave and TRAINSPOTTIng were released in the mid-90s, they received critical acclaim. Both were seen to be revolutionary for British cinema, particularly TRAINSPOTTIng. By looking at these two films, we can see how his style of directing began. Both open with a fast-paced manner, the camera constantly moving, letting us know instantly that these worlds, these characters and these stories are something new, unpredictable and never sitting still. They create a sense of unease. Shallow Grave was his feature film debut. Before this, he directed theatre and a few BBC dramas. He came onto the project with the script already written. The only major change he requested was for Alex, Ewan McGregor's character, to have the money at the end of the movie, stating that he believes you have to keep playing with these characters right until the very end. This method of storytelling can be seen in some of his other films. For instance, in TRAINSPOTTIng, Rent Boy double-crosses his lifelong friends. And in 2013's Trance, well, the twist is too good. I don't want to spoil it for you. Go and watch it and find out. Shallow Grave has sometimes been considered to not have a moral centre. However, Danny Boyle says he sees the film as being film noir in style. If there was a moral centre, the film would fall flat. I personally agree. It's a film about what happens when three friends are tested to the max. When looking at his next film, the more successful and massively iconic TRAINSPOTTIng, we begin to see the start of a pattern. The characters in most of his movies do things even though they know they shouldn't. It's what Danny Boyle is good at, exploring the motives behind their decisions and showcasing how it affects them. He's especially good at doing this with his unique visual flair. I could go on for days talking about the cinematography in all of his movies, even his weaker films. However, I'm not going to do that, not in this video at least. Instead, I want to discuss how he uses visuals to create an experience, to make you understand how a character feels. For instance, you have the scene in TRAINSPOTTIng when Rent Boy is overdosed. In order to showcase how the character is feeling, he uses the camera in strange and unorthodox methods. We don't see Rent Boy overdosing, we don't see him in hospital. Instead, we as the audience are thrust into this disorientating experience. We get a small glimpse into what it would be like to overdose on drugs. A far more effective method of storytelling, showing rather than telling. During 2015 Steve Jobs, we followed the titular character 40 minutes before 3 separate product launches. Many would say Jobs was ahead of his time, a mind full of futuristic ideas. In order to showcase to the audience, Boyle decided to use digital cameras for the sequences set in 1998.
It's 1998 when the digital cameras weren't available, but we used them for the 1998 section because we wanted to suggest his mind, the infinite possibilities now of digital resolution.
Finally, in 28 days later, Anthony Dodd Mantle decided to shoot large proportions of the film on digital, consumable cameras, hoping to achieve a look that was far more urban, off-putting, and as if it was filmed on a camera that any of the main characters could have picked up off the streets, further adding to the post-apocalyptic world that the filmmakers had created.
I love that rehearsal process, being able to talk about things and also getting a familiarity with the actors before you begin.
I remember Chris Evans being so astonished that we were rehearsing.
It's just ridiculous. You don't do that for most films.
Often collaborating with the same people on many of his films. To name a few, we have screenwriter John Hodge on many of his earlier films, composer John Murphy on 28 Days Later, Millions and Sunshine, and finally Ewan McGregor, who crops up throughout. Danny Boyle isn't just one man. He's a collaboration of people coming together to create movies that are always different and always trying to test the audience.
Now, thanks for watching, guys. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been very different for me to do something like this, but it's been something that I've wanted to do for a while. I've loved his films for such a long time. and I haven't really touched upon his films at all. I haven't spoken near enough in depth as like you probably want me to. There's so much more I could talk about. You've got the London 2012 Olympics opening ceremony, for God's sake. But yeah, this is all I wanted to talk about in this video, and if you enjoyed it, I would love to know, and I will happily do another one. I hope you've learnt a bit about Danny Boyle and about how his life has influenced his films. I hope you kind of understand a bit more of his style, his way of storytelling. And yeah, if you want to see more of these kind of videos, please comment down below, leave a like, and just let me know if you want to learn more about Danny Boyle or any other films out there, because I've actually really enjoyed spending like the past 3 weeks on this video. I've really enjoyed it. But before I go, I just wanted to share with you what was originally intended to be the opening to this video, but I felt worked better as the ending. So yeah, thank you. Make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe if you're ready, and enjoy this tribute. See you later.
You make a film inch by inch, and that's like, that's one of the best expressions I've ever heard. It's absolutely true.
Choose looking up old flames, desperate to believe that you don't look as bad as they do. Choose live blogging from your first wank to your last breath. Human interaction reduced to nothing more than data. Choose unfulfilled promise and wishing you'd done it all differently. Choose never learning from your own mistakes. Choose watching history repeat itself. Choose the slow reconciliation towards what you can get rather than what you always hoped for. Settle for less and keep a brave face on it. Choose life.
Loss and gain, prejudice and pride. But it all turned out just